Okay, I think we shall get started. So, good morning, everybody. Firstly, thank you very much for joining us on our July virtual insight event. Ravina, I'm just going to mute you because it's a little bit of background noise. So yeah, welcome to our July Insights, Virtual Insights. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Zoe Young from Draycir, who's going to be talking to us about automating your purchase invoice processes. So less from me, more from Zoe. I'll pass straight over to her. The only thing to say is the session is being recorded, but feel free to ask any questions as we go, and also utilising the chat if you have anything that comes to mind, and I'm sure Zoe will come and answer those towards the end. So without any further ado, over to yourself, Zoe.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you for the introduction. And so I can see some of the names on the webinar today, which I recognise. So hello to all those people that already know me. For those that don't, as Michael said, I'm Zoe. I'm one of the account managers here at Draycir, and I'll be taking you through, ideas for you to automate your purchase invoice process and sort of streamline that process as well. So for those of you that don't know who Draycir are, so just a little slide there just to show who we are. So, I mean, we date back 21 years now, and we don't just work with Sage here in the UK and Ireland, but much more further afield globally with Sage. Everything I'm talking about today, though, is compatible with Sage 200 Professional, because obviously we work with all different flavors of Sage as well. So you might already recognise some of the names on the screen just there. They're all of the add-ons that we have for Sage 200 Professional. The one that we're going to be focusing today is document recognition, which also comes with its own approvals. And this is solely going to handle your purchase invoices. Okay. So why as a company did we feel it was important to create a solution like this? Well, by listening to users and listening to their challenges, really. And we all know, especially with software evolves over the years. And for many, many years, people have been using our Spindle document capture solution, which meant you still had to tap in data entry of the purchase invoice, but you could then capture electronically the invoice. And this is going one step further than that. So this is really the challenges even the people that were using Spindle document capture still had. And one of the main ones is always that there's too much time spent on data entry of purchase ledger invoices. Most definitely. It's always going to be a time-consuming task. Whenever somebody is manually putting in data entry of purchase invoices, unfortunately, we can't avoid it. There could always be human error within any of that data entry that's going in. You know, we're not robots, we are just human, and unfortunately, accidents can happen. Sometimes we get the challenge where, a company doesn't necessarily have many invoices, but it's the amount of people that's doing that job. And sometimes when there's not many purchase invoices, there's also not many people, if only it might just be a part-time person that's actually processing it. So they're the sort of people that really do need a software to be more streamlined, to make things quicker. But on the flip side of that, obviously, you've got massive companies where they've got massive amounts of purchase invoices, and they also need something to make things quicker for them as well. Also, if you've got multiple companies, so multiple entities in Sage, and of course you have to keep swapping in and out of the companies to then process the invoices, which again is very time consuming. If you're using purchase order processing in Sage, of course, you've got that 2- and 3-way matching. So yes, you need to match it against the purchase order lines, and also you need to check it's been goods received as well. And obviously that is then time consuming. Trying to find the purchase invoice after it's already gone on. So prime example, auditor requests to see an invoice. How easy is it for you to find that invoice? And sometimes if that's going to take you a long time, again, we've got another time consuming task. Another area also that we hear so much of, and this at the moment has to be probably about the number one, and that's when to approve a purchase invoice is a manual task. Sometimes I hear of people logging them on spreadsheets, but more often than not, what's happening invoice, then put it on someone's desk to say, can you authorize it, sign it, and then it'll come back to me. Of course, if you're doing that, then it gets lost. Or it could be the case that I'm emailing it to someone and have I recorded that? Do I know that it's not come back, etc. So often they're going to get lost. So there, I mean, there's more challenges than is on the screen just there, but they are the vast majority of the ones we hear again and again and again. And is there a solution to cover all of those things? Yeah, there is. And that solution being Spindle Purchase Invoice Recognition. So it uses what we call OCR, optical character recognition. So what this means is there's no more data entry of your purchase invoices, because the software, the OCR software, is actually going to read the data on your purchase invoice and then lift it out and then fill in the boxes, if you like. That's exactly what it will do. So of course it minimizes human error. It only needs you to intervene when the software needs help. So automatically that will make it faster for you. And it will also work across multiple Sage companies. You don't need to split them beforehand. I don't need to say, okay, I'm working in company 1 now I'm working in company 3. As I'm working through the process, I can be doing one company 1 minute, next company next minute, back to the other company, now to the next company. It doesn't matter. The software will sort them for you to which company it's going in. For those of you, and probably not all of you using purchase order processing, but for those of you that are, then it will do the 2- and 3-way matching automatically. So it will check that there's a purchase order, first of all, on the invoice. If it does see the purchase order, it will then start checking it of what your purchase order is in Sage. And that will include both line level detail, but also if it's been goods received as well. Now, the software will highlight to you if it doesn't match, because you need to know about that. Now, if it doesn't match, then we could actually then use the Spindle approvals to say, actually, the unit price on this line doesn't match. Okay, that's all right. Spindle approvals knows it needs to go to this particular person to authorize that. Or it could be this particular item hasn't been goods received. No problem. Spindle approvals will send it to the person that should be goods receiving to check that the goods have come in. So it all ties in really nicely as a whole tool together. It will also automatically archive the purchase invoice. So as soon as it's posted the invoice in Sage, against that transaction, you'll see a little view button. For those of you already using Spindle document management, you'll know exactly what I mean by the view button. So transactions there, the transaction will also have a view button. That view button will show the PDF of the purchase invoice as well. Now that same invoice is visible in lots of areas. So let's say we're using purchase order processing. I'd see on the purchase ledger, in purchase order processing, and also on the nominal ledger. In addition to that, I'd also see it outside of Sage in the Spindle search tool as well. For those of you just using the purchase ledger, you'll see it in the purchase ledger, the nominal, and also in the search tool as well. The approval side of it. So remember, if you are that company that prints off the invoices for them to get approved, or maybe you're emailing someone, can you approve it? This is a free tool. So this isn't going to cost you anything. Doesn't need to be a Sage user, doesn't have to have a Spindle user. It's just a completely free tool, which is unlimited users. And it also means that when you send something for approval, they'll also have visibility of the PDF purchase invoice as well. So actually that's nice and easy to use the approvals tool as well. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to dive into the software so you can see what it does as well. As Michael said, if you want to use the chat tool to ask any questions at all, please feel free to do so. I'll keep my eye out on that chat window in case any questions come through, so I can ask them as we go through. Otherwise, if you prefer to leave it till the end, that's absolutely fine as well. Okay, so let's have a look at Spindle Purchase Invoice Recognition. So the first thing we need to do, of course, is to capture the purchase invoices. And we can do that one of two ways. So you might still have the odd invoice coming in by post, and that's absolutely fine. You can see I've opened up this document portal and it has an area for me to capture. So all I need to do is put my invoice in the scanner, press scan, and then it will load up the purchase invoice itself. All I then need to do is highlight the invoice, or it could be multiple invoices, press recognise, and what you'll see is, here it is there. So it's first of all, it's queuing, and we're going to have a look at some more as well, so I can show you what all of that means. The other way that you might want to do this, you received an email with some purchase invoices and you want to send it to this portal. So you'll be given your own email address where you can send all of these invoices to. So as soon as I press send, in a moment, you'll also see those ones coming into this portal here. So what does queued mean? So queued means it's queuing to go in the cloud. So what we're looking at here, Spindle Document Capture, is sitting on your server and client PC, but the software behind it is in the cloud, and that's why it's queuing. It's queuing to go in the cloud. The next thing, as you can see, what's happening is analysing, and that's analysing not just the purchase invoice to see, you know, where the invoice number is, what the values are, etc., but it's also analysing your Sage data. And the sorts of things it's analysing, it's making a good guess on which entity in Sage it needs to be posted against, who the supplier is, can it find the invoice number, invoice date, does it have a purchase order? If it has a purchase order, does it match the purchase order? Or if there's not a purchase order, is it happy with everything else on the invoice? And then the last status is what it wants you to do. So it could have been that it went through the process, but actually it was happy with everything on the invoice, knows where to post it to in Sage, etc. However, it does need to go for approval based on some pre-configured rules. So it's already been sent for approval. The one above it, yeah, that was all right straight away. So it was posted and archived. So there was nothing that needed to be approved. It just went straight to posted and archive, as these ones have done, which I did earlier. So anything that's posted and archived, we don't need to keep in here. We can actually just delete it up. Or it might be that we want to have an automation later on that automatically deletes those off for me. The ones I've just deleted that said posted and archived, these are the same invoices here. And what you can see, it's already recognised that they're a duplicate. And again, with a duplicate, we don't need to keep them. Sage has recognised the company, supplier, invoice number and date is exactly the same. It's a duplicate, so I can delete it. It doesn't need to go any further. Okay. So what I'm left with here is all of these ones that say verification required. In other words, the software is asking me to check the information that it's found. Now, it could be I have said to the software, I always want to verify this particular supplier, and it's always, let's say, for example, the nominal analysis that I want to double check. Now, a good reason for that is there is no purchase order against this particular supplier ever, but actually sometimes when the invoice comes through, I need to split it against two different nominals. And of course, Sage only provides one default nominal for those ones to go through. So it will always allow me to add on the nominal that I want before it goes through to authorization and then before it gets posted and archived in Sage. So in other words, I'm always going to see it before it goes through. On the flip side of that, it will say verification required because it needs me to verify it. So there's something on the invoice that it's not happy with and it wants me to check. That could be that it's not been goods received. It could be that it's not matching the purchase order, whether that is the unit price or gross, whatever it is, and it wants me to check it. It could be that it couldn't find something such as an invoice number. And the important thing to understand here is if all of you had sent me an invoice now to this portal, it would already start reading the data without me doing any training at all. So when I load up these invoices, which I'm about to do, the findings of it is exactly how the software has found it. There's been no training involved here. I haven't had to do it. I only need to do it when it can't find something. So it does actually mean that when you first have this software, you don't have to train every single supplier. The important thing is that the supplier is already in Sage, and where there's a purchase order, the purchase order is already in Sage as well. So let's have a look what it means by verification required. So what I'm going to do is highlight one of them, press verify, And that will then load up a brand new screen for me. And you'll see that we're in a web browser. So remember, this element of the software is in the cloud, hence why we're opening up the web browser. Because it's in a web browser and it is cloud software, it also means you'll also receive automatic updates as they appear. So you don't have to wait for a new version to be released. You'll always be on the latest version with the latest features anytime you log into the software here. I say log in, it's using Windows authentication. So actually I've not had to log in at all. But you'll see here indicated by however new features are on there since you've last logged in. If I click on there, and you'll see that was a new feature of ours 2 weeks ago, that you get automatic updates. And you can always read more about any of the new details. And also there's always a link to the help article for it as well. So you don't need any training or anything like that. It's already on. So overnight that would happen. So let's go back to the software. So what you can see here is it's loaded up my invoice, which is great. Also, what it's done, it's already filled out some of these boxes on the right-hand side here. That's the OCR software that's done that. So the sorts of things it's done, it's had a look which companies say. So if you've got multiple companies, fantastic, this is compatible with that. And what it's done is it's found the invoice to name to make that relationship. Now, if you have any of your suppliers and the invoice to name is slightly different to what you've got in Sage, so mine is called Homestyle Kitchens Ltd, but let's say I used to be called Zoe Young Kitchens once, and invoices are still coming through for that name, then what I could do in the Spindle software is add some variations. So actually across all of my invoice for this company in Sage, I haven't just got Homestyle Kitchens Ltd. I've also got Homestyle, I've got Zoe Young Kitchens Ltd, I've got Zoe Young, I've got Kitchens Limited, and therefore it will know to look out for all of those things, which simply means it will find it without you doing anything. It will then try and find the supplier within that company. And by clicking on any of these fields here, it will show you where it's taken the information from. So I know in Sage, I have the VAT number. So that's how it's made that, that's how it's made the relationship between that invoice and also the Sage data. So simply putting on a VAT number for any of your UK suppliers, or if you have international suppliers, you can use the IBAN number. A number is always like for like. Otherwise, if there's not a VAT number or an IBAN number on the invoice, we need to use things like a web address, but they're not always on an invoice, or the name and address. We need to make sure it is exactly the same, both on the invoice is the same as what is on the, say, in your Sage data as well, and then it will match. So it's not just a VAT number, IBAN number, it can use other things. But as you can imagine, VAT number and IBAN number, because it's just a number, it's the quickest to recognise it. You'll also notice it's found the invoice number. Yep, it's found the label invoice number to find that. And also, most importantly, it's also recognised that this document does not have a purchase order associated to it. So for any of you not using purchase orders, yep, brilliant. This is going to be the example for yourself. Any that are using purchase orders will also be looking at some purchase order examples as well. If you've got a combination of them both, absolutely fine, no problem at all. If you're just working on purchase ledger only at the moment and thinking of getting moving to purchase orders later on, absolutely no problem at all. You can start this software with it. And then when it starts finding purchase orders, automatically it will start looking for purchase orders and finding them and matching them as well. So you'll have noticed as I've been talking there's lots of little tabs along the top. All of these tabs do different things. Don't need to look at them all, just depending on what I've got, how I've got set it up in Sage, and also what is on this particular invoice. So for an example, because this invoice doesn't have a purchase order, I don't need to look at line items. I will look at line items when there is a purchase order though. So that means I can go straight to the footer. The footer is obviously bringing up any information down at the bottom there. So it's both through the line total. And remember, I've not trained this. This is automatically bringing out these figures. VAT, VAT amount, currency, gross. So again, for international, we've got a currency here. If I click onto it, it will show you where it's taken it from. It's taken it from that symbol there. If it said GBP, exactly the same. That's no problem at all. It will do that. If you have multiple VAT rates, again, no problem. It will fill it out up to 3 different VAT rates on here. If you wanted to check which T code in Sage it's using, that's when I can look at the VAT analysis, only if I need to check it or if I need to change it. So you can see here, it's my tax code 1. If I did want to change it, I can. If I was unsure what I needed to change it to, I can always search my Sage data. So this search here is actually pulling through the data from Sage. So I can see I've got 3 different T codes for my 20% rate for various different ones, and I can change it here if I needed to. It's always pulling through the default that is set up in Sage or whatever is against a purchase order for those that are associated with a purchase order. Project analysis is only applicable for those of you that are using Sage Project Accounting, so it's also compatible with that. And lastly, the nominal analysis. So for this particular invoice, all I really needed to check was the header, the footer, nominal analysis, and see if I can see anywhere on this invoice where it's highlighting something in green or red. And straight away here, you can see this is what it needed me to confirm manually. And that is my setting in Sage. Sorry, not in Sage, in Spindle. So I've said I always want to check the nominal analysis for this particular supplier, because it's the supplier that I have a lot of non-purchase order invoices for, and it might be the case that I need to insert another line. And if I wanted to insert another line, very much like how I did on VAT, what I can do here, I can actually bring through all of my nominal codes. So if I wanted to pull one through, I can. I can then split it if I needed to. If I do it incorrectly, it will always warn me. So that's what a red field would look like, which again, it needs me to verify that because it looks like this isn't equaling. So it's not happy with it. I'm quite right. I've split it incorrectly. So once I split it correctly, it's done. The narrative, that's my default that I've just got set up. But if you did want to add any more notes, you can do here. If you needed to pull through from a purchase order description line, you can do, but only when there's a purchase order. If it's just a purchase ledger only, it's got nowhere to pull that data from. So you always have to manually input it. So at the moment, all I've done there is just added on another nominal line. And now I'm saying, yes, that is ready to be posted. But what it will do, it will go through the approvals process first. So remember, if any of you got any questions as I'm going through, just use the chat window in order to ask me any questions. But these are all of my next invoices. So what it means is it saves me from going back to here to click on my next one to press verify. Now I have come back to here so you can see what's happened. And what you can see there is that that invoice I've just processed has actually just been sent for approval, which means the person or people that need to approve it have already received an email. Nothing for me to do at this point here. So instead of going back here, as I say, to press verify, this job list here just means that I can load up my next invoice very quickly. So this is the same invoice again. So I'm going to do it as if I'm using this software for real. So what I'm doing is checking the header, see if there's anything green or red, checking the footer, checking the nominal analysis. This time, if I'm happy with that single nominal line, I'll just process it through and that's done, nice and quick. Now this time, let's have a look at one with a purchase order. So when you have a purchase order, I'm still doing the same. I'm still verifying it, but I need to find what it needs me to verify. And it's easily highlighted in green or when we saw the red as well. So the header, everything's okay here. Now this time we can see there's a purchase order. In fact, if you look closely, there's 2 different purchase orders here. So if your supplier generally puts more than 1 purchase order on the invoice, it's not a problem for us. The software can handle that, no problem. So what this has actually done is have a look at each individual one of these lines here. And when it's found on the purchase order, a quantity, unit and net that matches, it has then brought the relevant line through from the purchase order. So what I can see from here, from these 5 lines on the purchase invoice, it's gone back to Sage to these purchase orders and has found an exact match. When it's found the exact match, it's pulled through that purchase order line. And what we're able to see here is, well, actually, it completely matches my purchase order. The reason I know that is nothing's highlighted in red. So if, say, for example, this unit price was £52 on the invoice, but only £50 on the purchase order, it wouldn't find it. And then when I did match it, it would highlight it in red because it doesn't match. We're going to see an example of that later on. But it will also show other information as well. You can see which VAT rate code. You can also see from here how many items have been received and how many items were expected. Because sometimes I might have received, I don't know, I might have received 20 items, but I've already received an invoice for 10 of them. So how many am I expecting on this invoice? So it will also handle part deliveries as well, no problem. So for this one, there's nothing for me to do. So I can now look at the footer, check everything's okay there. Nominal analysis, in this case, same supply, so it still wants me to verify it. The difference that you're seeing here, it's got multiple nominal lines here because it's associated to a purchase order. And I've also brought through the description from my purchase order. So if I go back to the line items, it's this description here from the purchase order that I've actually pulled through here as well. So if you do want descriptions, that's a nice, easy way of doing it. So actually, there was nothing for me to action on there. It was happy with everything. It just wanted me to verify that nominal ledger. So this time, let's have a look at one that isn't matching. So a different supplier this time, so a different set of rules that I'll have behind it. But yes, I have got a purchase order. Great. Let's have a look at the line items. Okay, so it's pulled through 2 lines from my purchase order, but it's not finding this 3rd line. So this beige paint here is not finding that one. So what I might want to do is go to my purchase order. My purchase order might have 10 lines on it, and I need to find which of the 10 lines I need to pull through here. But I'm not going to know until I look through it. So let's have a look. Now, actually, there's only 3 lines on my purchase order. So what I can see is missing is this line just here. So what we've done is you can see a position number here, and you can see a position number here. So what that means is I can just say, yeah, that's line number 3, and it pulls it all through for me, makes it nice and easy. But what it has said is actually this value here is greater on the unit price and than what it is on the order. So that's okay, because I know that within my rules, one of my rules for my approval says, if the unit price doesn't match, it needs to go to this person. So for me, it matches totally for the invoice, which is what I wanted to do, but it's down to someone else to check against the purchase order now. So now I'll check the rest of the invoice. Doesn't need me to do anything else at this point, so then I can submit it. And now it's going to go for approval to, it could be the purchase order originator, it could be the manager, it could be whoever looks after that cost centre in order to resolve that particular issue. Okay. So there's a number of different examples that I can give you. A lot of people will say to me, what happens when maybe my invoice just has 1 line, but I've got multiple purchase order lines, or maybe it's the other way round where invoice has multiple lines, but I only have 1 purchase order line. No problem. So we actually have a configuration for that. So we can see it's picked up a purchase order. So if I go to my line item, what this is basically telling me is that it can't find a quantity, a unit and a net that matches on my purchase order. So like before, I'd want to bring up my purchase order to find which position line it's in. But actually, when I've done that, there's lots of lines here. And I probably already know for this particular supplier, they always put my whole purchase order in 1 line. But remember, it could be vice versa. You've got 1 purchase order line and they've got multiple lines. So what I can do as part of a configuration is say, for this particular supplier, always load the lines from the purchase order, which actually is the same as what I'm going to do here. Apart from I can do it as an automation, so I don't always have to press this button. Some people like to just press the button, which means when I press it, it'll just say, are you sure you want to do this? Because it's going to change the findings from the purchase invoice to your purchase order lines. Because of course you won't need to complete the order in Sage. That's always best practice, remember. So now what it's done is brought through all of my purchase order lines here. It matches completely. If it didn't, and I knew that there was a couple of items missing, I can take them out. But as you can see, doing it that way, just by pressing that button, means I don't have to say, okay, it's position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It just does it automatically for me. So then I can complete it. So the footer, fantastic. That's all right. Nothing in green or red. Nominal analysis. Again, what we're going to see here is that everything has been filled out as per the purchase order. So therefore I can then go down, I'm happy with everything, and yes, I'm ready to post it. Okay, so we've had a question in, thank you very much for that. Could you set a rule that if it were lower, it would approve? If it were higher, it would need to go for approval. Yes, you can. Yes, you'd always see the discrepancy on the screen because you need to know that it doesn't match. But the rule, we're going to go on to approvals in a moment. So yes, you could do an approval based on the fact that if it's higher, it needs to go for approval. Absolutely. Yep, no problem at all. Okay, thank you for that question. So let's have a look what's been happening in my portal. So what we can see is some have been sent for approval, some are still there for me to do as well. So what we're going to do is have a look at those approvals and how we can set it up. And remember, this is a completely free tool. So the users that you're adding into it, these are users that you can add in yourself. You don't need Innov8 or Draycir to even help you at this point to set up new users because there is no license, it's unlimited. So it means you can add as many users here as you want to. So all it needs is a name, email address, and then what you want them to do. So there could be an approver. Approvers can update nominal codes. You might not want them all to do it. You might want some to do it. You might want none of them to do it. So we've got that little tick box within there as well. If it's someone like me, so you'll see I can see all areas of this website, this approvals tool, then we tick all of the boxes, press add, and what that will do is invite them to actually set up their password, etc. And once they've done that, you'll see they're green and it says they're active. Once that's happened, then we can start on the workflow. So we can go through that example of where you wanted to approve it if it was higher, etc. So let's have a look at some of these. So one of the accounts I was using was HPN 001. And what I've said is for that supplier, doesn't matter on the value, I need Zoe or Thomas to approve it. And this is how I've set that up. So let's start from scratch. So I add a condition. If my condition was for the supplier, I would say, okay, for this supplier, and I would add in the account number. And then who do I want to approve it? I want Zoe to approve it. If you want multiple, that's fine. But when you have multiple, do you want them all to approve it or just one of them to approve it? So it's an either either when there's multiple. You might want to add on to that condition. So what you might want to say is actually when the net amount is greater or equal to 1,500, I want these two people to approve it. So that's a very, simple example of something you can do. Let's have a look at some ones that people will generally, the most popular ones. The supplier is a commonly used ones. Value is very commonly used. You've also got things like analysis code, whether that's cost center. Oops. Also got department as well. So I might look after a certain department called SAL. So actually anything for that of any value, I need to approve it. I might have a second rule that then says, okay, for this particular code, when it's greater or equal to £1,000, I need Thomas to approve that. So we can do different things on here as well. It could be just related to purchase orders. As you can see here, we've also got a document type as well, a document ID, which means whether it's got a purchase order on it or not. So we can single it out that way. We were talking about where the line item doesn't match the purchase order. My instructions are quite clear here for the approver. I would like them to check and change, check and change in Sage before approving, because I want the purchase order to match. So I've got here the purchase invoice item unit price does not match. So it doesn't matter whether it's higher or lower. We were talking earlier on if it's greater, or there's one that's less there as well. So actually we could use that greater in the example we had before. So now I need it to go for approval if it's greater. If it's under, it doesn't matter. Depending on who you want to approve it, a lot of people will want it to go back to the purchase order originator. So if you do, what is their Sage name? So let's say it's myself, my Sage name being Zoe Young, and then within here, the approvals tool, this is obviously linked to my email address and these rules. So this would then bring any purchase orders, any purchase invoices that have come through and the unit price is greater, it would all come to me. So then really what I should be doing is then going into Sage, make it, and I might already know that, oh yes, I didn't update that. I know there's been a price increase. So I would go in, I would change the purchase order accordingly, and obviously then approve it, and then it would match against Sage, and then it would complete the purchase order. So that's one example there, but let's have a look at some other ones as well. We can also do that based on the quantity. We've just had a look at the unit. We can do it based on the net, and also for goods received as well, if it's not been goods received. So if it's not been goods received at all, you'll probably know there'll be just one person or a few people within the business. That's this one just here. Purchase invoice line item doesn't match the purchase order, it's not been goods received. And again, I've got here that it's not been goods received. Please check and change in Sage before approving, and then everything's going to match up. So thank you for another question there. So an approver approves the invoice. Does this mean then it gets automatically authorized for payment within Sage? So as soon as it gets authorized here, yes, it will post an archive in Sage. Whatever instruction you've got in Sage for that payment, it's whatever you've done. So at the moment, if you imagine when this posts and archives it, it's exactly the same as you tapping in the purchase invoice. It's whatever your Sage will automatically do at that point. So it will just trigger however it does now. Okay. So what happens is when I say, yes, I'm ready to post an invoice, it will go through every single one of these rules. Now I've got my match rules on all, which means if it matches all four, it could potentially go to, depending on who's on there, it will pick up that these are the 4 reasons why it needs to be approved. So let's say my name is on all 4 of those. I need to approve it once, but I know the reasons why it's come to me. I don't need to approve it 4 times. It might be that I'm on it once, Thomas is on it twice, Cuddle's on it once. So 3 different people are going to get instructions to get this a particular one approved. What the approvers would do, they can come into this website and they can see the request screen. So obviously they won't see the user list, they won't see the workflow list, but they will be able to see their list of invoices here, everything that is left for them to approve. It could be like myself, I'd be able to see everybody's invoices here, which is just one of the user sort of the admin roles. And you can see I have mine on pending. So I know this is every single thing that is pending for me to do. If someone had already approved something that was waiting for me to approve, this grey circle would go green, or if it got rejected, it would be red. So I could clearly be able to see when action is needed. So for example, here, I've already approved these, but I'm waiting for Thomas and Henry to approve these ones here. So these are still awaiting. So let's go back to my pending list just here. So all I need to do to actually approve something is simply click into it. I'll be able to see the image of the purchase invoice. There it is. I can also see an audit trail. So this is me viewing it now. So even if I came out of it and didn't do anything and go back in it, you'll be able to see that I've actually viewed this twice. There you go. Down at the bottom, it gives me clear instruction of what the rule name is. So I know the reason I've received this is because I'm receiving all invoices from this supplier with any value. Mine does actually mean I can reassign it to another user if I want to. That's my user type allows me to do that. But if I wanted to approve it, I can say, yep, that one's okay to pay. And I might want to put a comment on if Thomas is also approving it. So down at the bottom here, he'll be able to see that comment. It actually only needed one of us to approve it. So actually, you can see that timeline's completely changed. I've now got who approved it, and then it's completed, which means it'll already be going through to Sage to post and also archive the invoice. So that's disappeared off this list now. So I can go to the next one and just say, yeah, I'm ready to approve that. I can approve it, and I'll just work my way through the list. Now there's one of these here, which was this one, where my instruction at the bottom is that the line item is not, well, I've not got received it. It's different to the purchase order. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to approve this without doing anything in Sage, just so you can see what's happened. Okay. Now what happens if I wanted to reject something? You can use these boxes here to multiple approve or reject if you want to. Whenever you're rejecting, whether it's through this screen or the other screen, I can't reject without a comment. So let's say I am a user and I can't change the nominal codes, but I saw there was a mistake. I could put, please change, let's say, please change cost center to this and reject. Again, it'll come off my list, but that's now an action point for somebody else to do because I can't do it. So I've just got 3 left just here. If I wanted to export everything that's pending for all my users, I'll just say what's been created in the last 30 days, because of course you might want to accrue for these invoices because Sage doesn't know about them yet. So if you are coming towards the end of the month, at least you've got clear visibility of what is outstanding, as it were. You might want to use this spreadsheet. I see a lot of people use it to chase approvers as well, to say, okay, all of these are still sitting in. We need to close up the month. Can everyone, get things authorized? And you just have a nice, quick, easy list to have a look at. But it also sections it out in all the different areas. So there's the 2. I just did it for the last 30 days. That's why I didn't pick up that 3rd one. Purchase order line items. Obviously, this is the request, so you can see the line item detail there for the invoice. Purchase order detail, we can see all of that. Nominal analysis, you've got everything in here basically, even project analysis for those that are using Sage Project Accounting. So a very detailed spreadsheet on everything that you've got left within here. So going back to the portal here, let's see what's happened. So we've got a duplicate. So we've already seen that before. So yeah, we can delete off a duplicate. We can also see this one here is posted in archive, which is great. So we can delete that one off as well. We've also got a discrepancy. So a discrepancy, what's happened there is that was the invoice where it didn't match. And if you remember, I didn't bother changing Sage or goods receipt. I just approved it. And this is like your safety net. So you can see there's a discrepancy there. Now, what I might want to do is reopen it and send it back through. But what it might be, it could be me that needs to change Sage. So I could go into Sage now, change the purchase order, press post, and then it's going to post and archive it. Okay, so just depending on it needs to be goods received as well. Oh no, I skipped the nominal on there. So that would then normally say posted and archived, and it will go through. The rejection, I don't need to go into Spindle approvals to find out what the note is. I can actually just see it here just by hovering over it. So for that particular one, I probably want to reopen it because there's an action point for me there. I need to change a nominal code. So what I would do is reopen the document. I'd go straight to the nominal analysis, make whichever necessary changes that I needed to. So I'd make a change to the nominal and then push it back through. Depending on what I'm changing that nominal to would depend whether it still needs to go for approval or not. I haven't changed anything, so I know it's going to go back for approval. Okay. The other one that I did has also been posted in an archive, so we can then delete that off as well. And that's me done. Okay, so I think we've got a oh, I've already answered your question. Could you export one per approval at a time? Yes, you can. Yes. So the actual report itself, we just go back to the approvals itself. And some people will just filter it when you go to Excel. But yeah, you could say, yeah, I just need to see everything to do with Zoe. So you could do it that way. Okay. The end result is, of course, what's in Sage. So if I go on the purchase ledger here, we'll be able to see the transactions that have come through, and also, more importantly, that it's electronically archived that purchase invoice. So again, nice and easy. Someone needs to see what the purchase invoice is, it's there. Remember this approvals tool, you can also see the purchase invoice there. And incidentally, anything that didn't need to be approved, you'd also be able to see here as well. So if I don't even have access to Sage, I could potentially see all the invoices here as well. So I'll be able to see everything that's gone through, including things that didn't have to be approved. So the default approval decision was it to go straight on. This is the download of the invoice here, or I can click into it and I can actually view it on here as well. So it's another place where you could actually see sight of an invoice. So let's go to my HBN 001 that I've been using. Be able to see is this is where we'll see the invoice. We've also got the view button there, and we'll be able to see the image of the purchase invoice as well. If there was one there with a purchase order as well, we'll still be able to see it here, but also we'll be able to see against purchase order processing, we'd also be able to see the view button, and you'd see the image of the purchase invoice here as well. Not only that, against the nominal and also against the search tool as well. Okay, so that's kind of like the end result of purchase invoice recognition. Where are the PDFs for the invoice saved? Would it be on our server or in the cloud? So it'd actually be sitting on your server. So Spindle Document Management, which is how I'm capturing it and also how I'm archiving it. That's sitting on your server and also your client PC. That's where the archive is. It's also where this search tool is as well. So this is another way that I can say, actually, can I just have a look at all the invoices for this particular account? And you'll be able to see them on here. Okay, so it's only archiving the PDF once, but you're just seeing it in all of those different places. Okay. So I'm just conscious of the time. So you will still have time to ask me questions at the end, so don't worry about that. So we've actually really looked at two different solutions. So Spindle Document Management is a prerequisite, it's an add-on to the recognition tool that you've just seen there. So you'll always have to be a full Spindle Document Management user in order to use the tool you've just seen, with the exception of the approvals, which doesn't need a license at all. It's the free tool that you get with it. So how much is it? So as with all of our software, you can buy it capital or you can buy it as a monthly subscription. Remember that Spindle Document Management user, if you haven't already got one, then it'd be £35 each per month. The recognition module is just £67 a month. And then you need to purchase documents. So how you're paying to use the recognition tool, because it's in the cloud, you have to pay to use the cloud. So for every one PDF that goes through, then you'll buy almost credits, if you like. So my example here, if you're running about 200 invoices a month, there's a 2,500 document bundle, which is £1,234. So just to give you a little example of roughly what the costs are involved for this particular solution. So we're not talking megabucks here at all, you know, but, you know, to streamline your process, it's a good, valuable tool. Now, if anyone wants a quotation particular to, you know, your requirements, then your Innov8 account manager will just need to know how many Spindle document management users you need, and of course, how many invoices a year roughly are you processing. So they'll be able to give you a formal quote, including installation, configuration, also training for the software as well. Okay, so I know, thank you very much for those of you that have been asking questions as you go along. If you've got any more questions, now's your opportunity to ask me any of those things. Otherwise, what I want to say is just thank you very much for listening this morning. I hope some of you have learned a little bit more. If you'd rather have a more in-depth for your business, a one-to-one demonstration, more than happy. If you want to go to Innov8 account manager to organise that, we can organise one-to-one demonstrations, no problem at all. But thank you very much for your time today. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Zoe. That was fab. I don't know if you want to just quickly scan through the chat, because I know there's a couple that were coming through as you ended.
I think I've answered them all, actually.
Yeah, which is
I've answered
good.
them as I went along. Yeah, I think they're all does the PDF of the invoice get attached against? Yeah, that's what I've just showed. Yeah, it's against the one in Sage. So yeah, I've answered that one.
One more above.
I don't know what that means. Is it just the invoices that count towards the documents, or would it be purchased, or would a PO request also count? So with the document counts, the only thing that is counting are actual purchase invoices that are going through. So it only works with purchase invoices. So say, for example, you wanted to capture any purchase order information. No, that's completely separate to that. That's just against your normal Spindle document management capture functionality. So yeah, it's only your purchase invoices. So that's fine. Don't worry for being late. As long as you're here, that's all right. Lee, you just said one more above, please. I'm not sure what that means. If you want to come off mute if you want to ask any questions, anyone, but
it's all right. That was me. It was answered, Zoe. Thanks, Zoe.
oh, was it? Right. Okay, lovely. Thank you. I didn't know if it was me going mad.
Yeah, that was cool.
Oh, perfect. Thanks, Lee. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Brilliant. Well,
Okay.
I think we're getting pretty much on to maxing out our time for you today, Zoe. So thank you very much for that. It was really, really informative. And just the usual plug of our August event. We are running the virtual insights right through the summer. Next month, we're going to be looking at business analytics for the changing world, and going to be joined by the data experts at Pan Intelligence. So if you do want to register for that, have a look out for the registration link, either coming directly from the marketing and account management team, as well as on the Insights newsletter that will be coming out start of next month. But yeah, thank you very much. Feel free to drop off. Obviously, there will be a recording as well made available. So if you have been maybe engaged and want to share it with colleagues, then feel free to share the recording, catch up on it as well. And if you need anything more direct via your account managers, and Zoe can answer any specifics. But thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your days.